are going to be talking about Microsoft Power Automate and how you can revolutionize. Obviously, this is kind of just effusive and praise type of a title, but the goal is to give you something very practical to take home after today and be able to start using Power Automate to create workflows and get more out of something that you are already paying for that you may not realize. I am AJ Ansari. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at DSWI. And while my day job is not to implement and work on projects, Power Automate, Power BI, Power Apps, Copilot, these are areas that I'm very passionate about. And so if you are embarking on one of those, you may actually see me in an advisory role helping you out with some of these undertakings. I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2018. And while one part of that means I know a lot about Business Central and the technologies that we work with, another part basically is that I'm quite passionate about it. I share take a lot of time sharing my knowledge with our community, and kind of teaching and educating that, and a lot of that happens at conferences and so on. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me by email. There's also a QR code here which will take you to my LinkedIn page, or just search LinkedIn for AJ Ansari. I do a lot of postings on LinkedIn. I also post in Forbes Business Council. So find me there. Reach out to me with any questions that you might have. I love to engage with folks online. Most of you know us at DSWI as your Business Central partner, or a prospective Business Central partner if you're in conversation with our team. And certainly that's what we have done for many, many years. Dynamics Nav and Business Central have been what our team and our business has been built around since 2006. But we have also been very engaged in helping our clients with Power BI. We have some great Power BI solutions for finance and for sales and for purchasing. So these are ready to use, kind of data packs, if you will, or solution packs, turnkey and very quick to plug in. But then we also help our clients with custom Power BI projects that may take data from Business Central and any other sources where you might have that. Just as much, we can help with Power Automate. Now, Power Automate and its other, Power Platform cousin, Power Apps, are solutions from Microsoft that you can use to create workflows or create custom apps, and these can tie into Business Central data or again some other type of data. We have far fewer clients who usually knock on the door proactively about it. But once they understand what they can do, and once that knock happens, or once you hear, we find that then that's almost in a very positive way opens up Pandora's box. It's usually a negative sense that you say that, but it opens up the Pandora's box of imagination around all the things that can be done. And so our goal today is to just kind of give you a little bit of a teaser, a primer of what Power Automate can do for your business. And then, as you think about that, we could probably have individual conversations with you to explore if certain things you want to accomplish can be done quickly and easily with Power Automate. It is a citizen developer tool, so there's a lot of stuff that you could probably accomplish all on your own with Power Automate. But in addition to it being a citizen developer tool, it's also is capable of some very complex scenarios. So there are some folks and some companies that do nothing but Power Automate. And you might also find that in some scenarios, you may need the help of a developer in some more complex scenarios to give you certain things. And then on top of that, you might build your Power Automate workflows. Then lastly, you may or may not be familiar with this technology or a lot about it because you hear about Copilot in so many different ways, or you hear about Chat GPT and all kinds of AI. And Copilot, specifically the Copilot from Microsoft 365, the one that is a chat bot and that's built into your Word and your Excel and your Outlook when you get the license for that. That, and then there's also some Business Central capabilities with Copilot that automate certain processes. That's also another new and exciting field, and DSWI can help you understand how that can work for your business. If you join us in a couple of weeks, we're doing a webinar that will help give you an introduction to these tools, and then also explain how we can help you and how your business can benefit from these and kind of get more efficiencies, if you will. With that, let's jump into why Power Automate. So the general premise of Power Automate is, and it used to be called Microsoft Flow for anybody who's keeping up with old names. It's created to enable workflows across systems. You know, a lot of applications and systems have built-in or native workflows, and what happens with these workflows is, think about approvals, for instance. If there is a certain kind of sales invoice that or a purchase order, and if it exceeds a certain invoice, you need approval before that purchase order goes to the vendor. That is a workflow, and typically your workflow would start and end in your own system. So many of you might be using Business Central purchase order workflows, excuse me, that start and terminate inside of Business Central. We've had them in Dynamics Nav since about version 5. And then when Nav became Business Central, those workflows continued along. But along the way, Microsoft also added the ability for you to take those approval workflows, for instance, from Business Central and take them into Power Automate. You didn't have to, but the beauty of Power Automate is it can um, take something that happens in one system, and when that event occurs, it can create something, some other kind of an outcome on another system, or even on your phone or your tablet, or send you a text message, if you will, on your phone or your tablet, etc., or trigger something else to happen in another system. So there's a lot of opportunities, and there are hundreds and hundreds of connectors. So just to kind of give you a quick view of just the list of connectors that I'm talking about, here I am on the Power Automate website. These are just some of the recently added connectors, but as I scroll through it, you'll see Office and SharePoint and Power BI and SQL and some of those base things, or Microsoft Forms. And then as I scroll down, you might see a whole lot of other systems that you use in your day-to-day world, right? FTP or Google Drive, YouTube. Some businesses might be using Salesforce, or Box or Dropbox. You might have, you see SMS somewhere up there as well, SMTP. And then as I scroll down, just so many icons of apps and solutions that you may recognize. And there are, I wrote hundreds, but there may even be close to 1,000 at this time. I think Microsoft just hasn't listed out how many they are. Now, as I scroll down, you'll find that some of them have the premium mark on it, and some of them don't say anything on it. So just hold that thought, and I'll clarify what that means to you, and how that impacts the cost of what you're going to have to create. But just tons and tons of different connectors to choose from and work between. So your workflows can start in any one of these and end in any one of these other systems that I have here. The idea is, in some ways, to get timely alerts and notifications. That could be one reason why you use Power Automate. When something occurs in a system, you want to be notified, and you want to be notified on your phone. You want to be notified by text message or an alert on your phone, or by email, or in some other system that you use. And so that could be for that. The nice thing about Power Automate, and why we want to spark this conversation, is unlike so many other things that we offer, this doesn't necessarily require you to purchase additional licenses. If you are using Business Central, every one of your Business Central users, in the SaaS model, if you're in the Business Central Online or SaaS offering, every one of your Business Central users already also has access to, or includes a license for, Power Automate and for Power Apps. If you have somebody that is using Microsoft 365 or the Office 365, they also have access to Power Automate and Power Apps, but they have different types of connections they're able to use. So if you're using, let me kind of hit a couple more enters, and you see at the bottom, standard connectors, the ones that did not say premium, they are available out of the box for anybody using Microsoft 365 or Business Central. When you have Business Central users, you also get the Business Central connector, which is basically a premium connector, but it's included at no additional cost for those. So if you think about and a flow, a workflow that either starts in or terminates in Business Central, and maybe requires the sending of an email or sending of something to Google Sheets, which I saw was a free one, and so on. So all these standard connectors going back to this page, all the ones that don't say premium, any one of these, you can have a workflow start with or terminate in at no extra cost to you. So that's always a good thing. Now, if you are looking at other premium connectors that you might want to use, licensing models start at about $15 per user per month. If you would like to understand a scenario and how much that would cost, have a conversation with John or I. We could schedule something to understand what you're trying to create and then help you. What's also really neat about Power BI is outside of what I'm about to show you today, you will find a lot of templates and how-tos built right over here inside of Power BI. So when you're, sorry, in Power Automate, I think I said Power BI a couple times. One, you'll find there's some great learn tools that are available, learning for every level. And then you can also, as you scroll down, see more to explore, video how-tos, and so on, and templates that Microsoft has pre-created and some from community members. And so if you want to start searching for some great templates that involve Outlook, then you could kind of do some searches on Outlook and you could see a whole bunch of different ones. Save email attachments from Outlook to Dropbox. Be careful a little bit. This one's Outlook.com, the consumer. But if you look for Outlook 365, then you'll get some very specific scenarios from Outlook and Office 365. So, get daily reminders in email or post message to Microsoft Teams when an email arrives in Office 365 Outlook. I'm actually going to take one of these templates too in a little bit, and I'll show you an example in the third scenario. And then going from that slide onto how does this kind of work, right? What is the model that I want you to think about? So when you're creating a flow, usually it's going to be based on an event. So it would be an event or something that triggers this workflow to run. And that trigger could either be a manual trigger, or it could be something that is automated. It could be something that is scheduled. And then you look for certain conditions that may happen. And then if those conditions are met, then you want an action to occur. And it could be multi-level. It could be a very complex one, or it could be a very simple one. In Business Central, there are a lot of approval workflows for POs and invoices and so on. I intentionally do not have one of those as a scenario to show you today because there are so many videos that are out there, and this functionality has been around for a long time. But if that is specifically what you're hoping to see, just ping John afterwards, and we will set up a very short call with you and show that, and you'll get to see a little bit of how you can set that up. But I wanted to talk about some scenarios that are novel and outside the box, above and beyond approval workflows. There's also a very interesting little feature in Power Automate, which is a built-in Copilot, a Copilot for Power Automate. So you can describe to design it. If you notice back on this page over here, when I was on home, there is a let's automate something. What should it do? And so you could say these are some good examples. Every month, copy all files from OneDrive folder to another OneDrive folder. Or when a new item is created in SharePoint, send me an email. So if you were to take something like this or type that in, as soon as you click it, what it will do is it will start designing this workflow for you. And so this is AI taking what you have typed or a suggestion of what you've typed and says, hey, this is a suggested workflow where the trigger is when an item is created in SharePoint, then send an email. Do I generally like how this is going? I say next, and then I can start adding more things. First, I start off by putting my permissions or my credentials into, kind of fix the connection or to be able to connect to it. And then my Outlook. So if I just say over here, yes, connect via sign in to create, right? And now it's signed in as Sean. I say create a flow. And in less than a minute now, the flow started. Now at this point, it says invalid parameters because I've got to decide which SharePoint site I'm going to connect to, what list I'm going to connect, grab data from. And then when it comes to an email, who is it going to send an email to? Or what the subject is, or what the body will be, and so on and so forth. So these are some things that you would then have to populate. So essentially what it does is it creates an empty flow for you to be able to test and play with it. And this can be, as simple as you typing in and deciding what you'd like to do. Also, you'll notice in general, anything that you want to create, which starts off with a create button. Here you have these different type of workflows in which I've kind of said you have automated flows, instant flows, scheduled flows. So going back to this web page, An automated flow typically would happen without you doing anything. But an example could be when a record is changed in Business Central. Maybe you want to notify or be notified when a customer record has its credit limit field updated, right? And so you don't want to be notified every time a customer record is changed, period. Maybe an address changes and that's not worth notification. But if a credit limit is adjusted, then the controller in the organization wants to know, even though it should typically be done with your approval. But in this case, you at least want to be notified. So you could start off with something along those lines. An instant cloud flow is usually that's triggered manually as it's needed, and you can do that from inside of the Power Automate website. There's also a phone app and a tablet app for iPhones and Androids. And in the Power Automate app that you can download, you will be able to trigger a workflow simply by looking at. So I've got some workflows up here. If you're looking at my camera, I can see if I go to an instant flow. My hotel internet may not be the fastest on my phone, but basically, you on your phone would see a list of workflows, and from there, you would be able to click a button and then trigger a workflow to start. What's really neat too is if you're looking at my screen right now, let me stop sharing that for a second and just show my camera. I've got a little button up here. This is from a company called Flick. You can buy this off of Amazon for about $30 to $35, or you can buy this from the Flick website. And you have the ability to trigger an instant flow by pressing it once, or double pressing it, or holding and pressing it down. So you can have certain workflows happen just by the push of a button, quite literally, the push of a button. If you remember, Amazon a while back had done something like this. I think it still does exist, where you could push a button to order, your next box of Tide, or your next box of Kleenex tissues, or whatever it is that you may have run out. And so it's similar concept, but this is for business workflows that you could do. So let me share my screen again. So and then scheduled cloud flows. These are meant to be cloud flows that happen at 10 a.m. every morning, or 10 a.m. every third Monday, or whatever the case might be. We've seen an idea of describe to design it, and then there's some more it's the complex type of scenarios that I don't touch. Complex, not so much because of the difficulty. I would say probably advanced is a better word than complex. I won't get into desktop process automation or process mining. But these are also some things that you can explore. But I wanted to focus more on the most common business scenarios that tend to be in and around these three. And then all of this to start off, you may already have noticed the URL, but the URL you need to memorize is make.powerautomate.com. And if you have never used Power Automate before, but you have Business Central, as soon as you type in, it may prompt you for your username and password. It's going to be the same one as your business email, the same login email that you use to log into your Business Central. That's a username and password you're going to use. It will recognize your license, and it will bring you into it may actually go through a bit of a sign up process and just ask you to hit next a couple of times. But once done, you will end up at a screen like this, where you would be able to then see and kind of work with things. So the Learn area is someplace that I would absolutely recommend you take some time and bookmark. You will see a lot around creating these different types of flows and what have you. So with that, let's go back into my presentation. I think the slides are kind of where we're moving past now. I want to show you two scenarios. These scenarios are actually being used by our clients. Actually, the second scenario is being used by DSWI internally because we are a services-based organization. You'll see why that one is important for us. But in this first one, we wanted to talk about being notified when a critical business process fails in, say, Business Central. So in Business Central, what we had to do is track things around. Actually, let me go back a little bit. Uh, Job queues that people have. If you're using any kind of automation inside of Business Central, you know that a job queue allows you to schedule and run certain automations. And in a particular scenario, our customer was using Expandit mobile service. For anybody who knows that product, What that does is it handles the field service aspect of your operations. Users have mobile devices and they're out and about on the kind of out and about on customer sites. They collect data, and once all that service work is done, they close the service ticket, and that's flown back into Business Central to then update the service orders. But there is a little automation that runs that takes all the data from mobile devices that's brought into Business Central and held in a processing area. That processing area or queue that is then kind of reviewed automatically at certain times in the day, and then it's converted into Business Central or Business Central service orders or updates Business Central service orders. And we, on occasion, were seeing scenarios where something just wasn't converting right. And it was a little bit of a unique situation. And the customer wanted to be notified when that was happening, when that automation or the conversion was failing. And you could think of any other type of job queue situation as well. Maybe you're running at just item cost entries. Maybe you're kind of doing some other posting of costs or any other type of automation that you have in Business Central. When that fails, if for some reason it's not running or it fails, you want to know right away so you can go in and correct an issue, fix that. Now, in this particular situation, what also needs to happen is we have to create a Business Central API. So this is not a development class. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in kind of showing you the development side of it. But here's what I basically want to touch on. When you need to grab data from Business Central, you need to grab that data from Business Central using Business Central APIs. And it's basically very much like web service endpoints for anyone who's used BC for a while, but it's a slightly different construct. Microsoft has a list of about 40 or so APIs, and I'll show you in an example when I create I'm going to start off a simple Business Central workflow before I go into scenario one, and you'll see how there's about 40 or so APIs directly from Microsoft. Now, there may be a time where you might need to connect it to a custom page. And if it's a custom page in Business Central, then you need to make a custom API. Or you may have added some custom fields to a customer table or a vendor table, and you need those fields to be something you interact with in your Power Automate workflow. And in that case, again, we would need to create a custom API. And once that custom API is created inside of Business Central, then we create an automated flow in Power Automate, and we use the BC connector, and we tell the BC connector to read from this particular API that we've created. Good news is, if you need help creating a custom API, we can create those in a jiffy. Usually, creating a custom API for a customer page, vendor page, item page, or a customer table doesn't take very long at all. It's a very simple process for us. So you could give us a list of all the pages or the fields and things you want to expose. One of our developers would create those APIs for you. And then once those are done, you can do the rest of the Power Automate workflow yourself. So that is one way to go about it. You can, of course, learn how to develop and do them yourself as well. But if you aren't doing AL development, that may not be the most practical outcome. So what's really cool is there's also a couple of tools that you can purchase. One's called Simple Object Designer from HooGuard. There's another one from Spearbrained Ideas. They also have an API building tool. What these are, you pay or subscribe to use those tools, but they live inside of Business Central. And then if you want to create your own API, it's not writing code anymore. You go to a certain screen in BC, and it quickly creates those API pages for you and gives you the information you need to consume those or use those API pages. So depending on how often you need it or how complex your scenarios are, you could either invest in one of those or if they are few and far between, instead of paying for, an ongoing price to use those tools, you just leverage the SWI's development team and we could quickly create some APIs for you. So let's examine what this scenario looks like in one of my environments. Let me quickly go and load that environment up. As I do that, while that environment's loading up, what I want to do is share my screen here and just start off first with a Business Central login. So let's go to, 1 second, sorry. It's asking me on my second screen to authenticate. So that's a booting that, getting that other environment up. When you travel and you have multi-factor authentication, it recognizes you're not in the same place and you have to sign in again. So just let's get that one too. Way. Sorry for the momentary slowdown as I was doing that. All right. So now I think that's kind of loading up on that side. Here I am in kind of a Power Automate home screen, and it says I am in a certain environment. Not to get too complex, but just to help you understand, uh, you can have your Power Automate workflows across different environments. And an environment is typically going to be like a database or a particular area where your stuff is stored. If you're working with Business Central, if you're so on, it doesn't necessarily matter what environment here you're part of. Even if you have multiple environments, your Business Central workflows can be stored in any one of those. Users can have their own environments, but typically you'll find in situations where you're running business specific workflows, you would have an environment that's available to everybody in the business. If you have somebody who just wants to test or play in a sandbox environment, one can also be created. And we can help you understand and create those environments. But by default, there is going to be a default environment available for everybody. And so here it is at an organizational level. What you're seeing up here is DSWI Youth. This is our educational platform, our DSWI University. So even before I jump into scenario one, if I wanted to quickly create an automated cloud flow that utilized Business Central, I would click on create and I would say automated cloud flow. I would give it a user-friendly name. So we'll just call it a scenario zero flow because we're not really going to go all the way with it. And then I'm going to go into Business Central. And as soon as I start typing, for some reason, the search isn't as good as I'd like it to be, but you will see Business Central workflows or connection, or what I would say triggers, excuse me, is the best word, triggers start to show up. Now, there will be two types of icons you might see. If you are seeing a darker background and a Business Central icon, this is a good one to use. If you see a lighter background and it also has a Business Central icon, it will say Business Central on premises. So for people who are using the Business Central online, I recommend that you pick the standard Business Central one. And notice that it already has a few things that you can choose from. When a Business Central purchase document approval is requested, or when a sales approval is requested, or so on and so forth, or when a record is deleted, when a record is modified, when a record is created. So let's assume I want to do something when a record is modified. And so I could say create. And when that happens, it starts off first by setting this up, and then I can go. Um, I like to use the old designer model. I've used this more often, so I'm just going to go back and uh, use this. And so right away in the old designer model, it starts showing me things like what is the environment for Business Central. Now, for anybody who uses Business Central, you know there's a production environment and you can have up to 3 sandbox environments. So I would select typically my production unless I'm testing in Sandbox or I want to create this in Sandbox first. And then I would have to choose the company that I would want to connect to. And so I could choose the company in choice that I need, and then API category. And this is where I'm going to be able to see the different API categories from Microsoft and anything else that I might have custom created. And so I have some for Microsoft called Automate V1, Automate V2, or so on and so forth. And I could choose, for instance, Automate V2. And here, these are some custom automation type of APIs that they have. Or let's go into the ones that you would typically use. And these would be my V2.0. And these are some endpoints. Microsoft has an API endpoint for the accounting periods table, one for chart of accounts, one for bank accounts, one for company information, one for currencies, customers, dimensions, employees, fixed assets, and so on. But from time to time, you may still want to make your own one for customers because I want you to consider that there are hundreds of fields in a customer table, hundreds of fields in a vendor table, and you may find that a certain field you're looking for did not get included by default in Microsoft's APIs. And so you could create one well, using a custom tool like I talked about, or ask DSWI to help you create a a unique API endpoint that is going to include those fields from from the customer table. But I would typically take something like this, and then I would start off with the next step, which would be this is a trigger. I might look for some conditions, so I might add some true false conditions, yes, no, and then what are the conditions? I define them, and I can define what they are, and then what an action is, and so on and so forth. So this being a scenario zero workflow, I'm not going to see this one to completion, and I'm actually going to bring up one of my workflows that demonstrate scenario one. So let's go to this one. I typically disable my workflows when I'm not using this in my demonstration environment. So D365 BC Hub is when I, as a Microsoft MVP, create contributions and I'm testing and playing with that. That's what I use over here. That's basically what it is. So let me go back and say, um, turn on this particular workflow, and let's edit this workflow so you can see what's happening. And at the same time, in the meantime, I'm also going to launch Business Central over here. So as you look at this tree or workflow tree, you can get a general sense of what's happening already. When a record is created and there's a Business Central icon, we're going to get information about the record because we need to understand which record it is, grab some more information from it. You might see this two times and go, why is there two times? And I'll explain that in a second. And then we look to see if certain conditions are met. If it's true, then we have an outcome which sends an email. So when the job queue fails, we are going to send an email. And so if I were to look at this over here in this particular environment here, let me just go into my um, workflow here first, actually. So this is in production. And the company that I'm using over here, when I use a company, love that it once I've selected it, it will start showing this as a GUID. And I will show you how we've overcome the GUID situation to actually get the name of the company. And then from a list of custom APIs, we've selected the ones that we're going to use. Once again, let me go back into this old designer mode. Sorry for the disruption there. Yeah. So production, and then this is the API category, and this is the API endpoint. We made one called DSWI job queue log entries. And then the next thing that we're doing in here is we will get the actual name of the company because we wanted to understand what the company was. We didn't want to see this in my email when I say, show me the company name. So to do that, we use a get record function where we say from the production environment for this particular company ID, show me the row ID. So what we do over here, I've already selected this, but if it wasn't here, I would have clicked in the space and using the dynamic content box, I would have chosen the company ID. So there's no rocket science here. Anytime you want to add any dynamic content or something like this is not shown, you come to this box and then it will start showing dynamic content and you select this. So the first thing I was trying to do was get the name of the company so I can show this in my next email. Then I wanted to get the record of the job queue ledger that was erroring out. So over here, what we were doing is saying whichever one is triggering this to happen, the new record, the new failure record in job queues that gets created in the job queue log entries page in BC, let's see that particular information. So that's what we're doing by saying, show me the row ID. And so once again, when I grab the row ID, at that point going forward in all of my condition and everything else that happens, now I can see all these other fields that are available part of the job queue ledger entry. So for anybody who isn't familiar with job queue or job queue ledger entries in Business Central, let's actually go and show you what I'm talking about here. So over here, if I were to go to job queues first, job queue entries, these are going to be all the job queues that we've set up, all the automation that we've set up. So maybe you have an automated cash flow forecast update, or you have automated the running of a certain report, or something else. And then when you have these, when they fail or succeed, it results in the creation of a job queue log entry. And so the job queue log entries are where it's going to show every single time something has run successfully or something has errored out. So you can kind of filter this by filter success, or filter for in process, or filter for error, etc. And then you can see what happens. And so this particular table is going to show me both the person who ran it and the status, and also it will show me some details. If there is a failure and there is some failure notification, it will show me what the error message is as well. And so I wanted to be able to grab all of this information from the job queue log entry table when it fails to run, and I want that to be reported in an email format. So we're taking all of these different fields, and in this particular example that we've created, we only wanted to be notified if some job queue entries failed. They had, in this particular client situation, they have about, I think, a dozen job queue entries that are scheduled to run at different points in time, but they only wanted to be notified in the case of two different reports or code units. In their case, in my example here, I wrote this reports objects that fail. So the way I've written my conditions is when a new job queue log entry is created, which means something is successful or failed, whenever a new line is created in this table, check for the following conditions. First, check to see that a status is error. If it's success, I don't care about it, right? It's great. It ran. I don't want to be notified. And then I want to narrow down to only capture when two things or two reports or code units fail. So in this case, I said, and the object type is report, and the report is this or that. So notice how this is structured. You may be used to seeing conditions written differently, but the way this is and means this and this have to be met for it to happen. And then within this, there's also a little or. So for the third, this and this, or one of these two have to be true. So kind of when you think about Boolean operators, if one of these is true, then the total outcome is true. So then it would be this condition, and this third condition totally has to be true. And if those two happen, then it goes into the yes loop. If one of these isn't met, goes into no. If both of these are true, but the report that is erroring out is not one of these, then again, it goes into the no. Now, I've not added anything to happen when it's a no. I've just said it can terminate. But if it is a yes, then send an email. Now, how did I choose particularly this connector? Right now, it's already all written up, but if I had to add another action, this is where I would say add another action that says search connectors and actions. So you can say Outlook for Office 365, but as you say Outlook, make sure you're looking for Office 365 Outlook. Why do I care about that? Well, I have an Outlook 365 license that uses my email, my business email. Outlook.com, it's a personal service. If your business is using Gmail, by all means use Gmail. It also supports SMTP, it supports other things. If you wanted to send text messages, there's a really neat service called Twilio that you can explore. Twilio, I think, is a premium connector, if I recall correctly, or no, it's not a premium connector. Uh, Yes, it's a standard connector, so it's free, but you may require a paid subscription for certain features of Twilio. So Twilio has some freemium subscription levels. You could probably send some things like text messages for free, but I think if you want a custom number that you need to send a message from, like a short number, then it would require a certain subscription level within Twilio. But in my example here, I had Outlook, so you can choose Outlook Office 365, and then we'll show you the various types of things, which would be send an email, which is what I've done. And then once I start to send the email, it'll give me the option of who do I send it to. So I can choose, I've manually typed in the person I want to send it to. I've manually typed in a subject line. And then using HTML, I can just start typing in the HTML version of the body. The new designer actually gives a user more of the WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get. The old designer, I like typing in my HTML code. If you don't like typing in the HTML code, explore this. Let's go back into Switch without saving so you can see what that looks like. So you'll see this is more kind of a rich of rich text editor, if you will. So I've got that this is to inform you that there is a failed job queue entry, and so this is all just static text here. And now this is where I get some dynamic fields. So if I wanted to show, say, the status, I've already got that. And if I wanted to, if this were not here, and I wanted to pick in a status, this is where I could use my dynamic editor, and I could then select from the drop down. It's going to show me all the different fields that are available for me to choose from. So let me see what happened over here. I think when I was editing some stuff, I'm getting 1 second. When I make changes to things on the fly and I don't save it, sometimes it can stop showing some dynamic fields. So I'm just refreshing and starting over with this flow without actually making any changes, and then we'll come into this email. It should be a cleaner experience at this point. But if I didn't have this field now, I should be able to go into the dynamic editor. And from here, I might need to refresh something. But usually with the dynamic stuff, I should be able to then see all the other fields that have been generated over here to select them from the drop down. I've got to check what happened over here and why it's not showing me these anymore. So I've select one by one. So this is a placeholder for status. This is a placeholder for object type, object ID to run, object caption. Where's all this data coming from? It's all coming from the job queue log entry page. These are all the fields that we're talking about that we're populating into the email. So it'll populate all of that. And then I also have some parameters that I want to maybe include. So I can say, does anybody else go get a CC or BCC on this? Do I want to add some sensitivity to this, like a high sensitivity? Do I want to add some importance levels, etc.? And when it's done, I save it, I turn it on, and at that point, as it runs, it will tell me every time this flow ran successfully. Every time it failed, it can run a 28-day history that it shows you, and it keeps sending these emails out as they come out. So if I go to outlook.office.com, I might have some work emails here as well. So I'm just pulling this off of my screen really quickly. So here is an email that had previously been set up to show up. So where an error had happened, it will send me an email. This is to inform you that there is a failed job queue entry. Details are shown below and all the information that was there. So this is how the first scenario was executed. In the interest of time, I'm not running this and waiting for a flow to for an error to happen. Kind of showing you the baked cake. It's like watching a TV show where they show you how to mix the ingredients and they take a baked cake out of the oven and show you how all that is. So that was scenario number one. With scenario number two, we use this at DSWI as a services organization. We rely on our team members entering their timesheets in a timely manner, and we want to make sure that their time entry is, all the stuff that they do, because our folks work typically 40 hours a week, so at least about 35 to 38 hours of their time has been fully entered, and that they've submitted that timesheet so that our managers can start reviewing that. So they're required by Monday morning to have all of their time for the previous week entered. So at 10 o'clock every week on Monday, it runs to make sure that everybody has your time in, the minimum hours required. And once that is been checked, anybody who does not have your time entered gets a quick email from us. So, and what we did in this situation, we added a couple of extra fields in BC to the timesheet pages. One was a minimum hours required that we added to, on the resource record in Business Central. Second one was a contact email that we store on the employee record in Business Central. And after we added this information, we created some new API pages in BC as well. And then finally, we created the automated flow with the Business Central connector. So I am actually going to show you a what's from my real world scenario here. So I'm going to log into my Business Central live environment and go to my live Power Automate. This is real world what's happening at DSWI. Oh, there's also, by the way, a Power Platform conference coming up in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is run by Microsoft, and you can get a $100 discount if you register. So when you're in this environment, you should see something very similar from time to time. Discounts, alerts, and other stuff that are going on. So here, let's go to My Flows with timesheets. So we have the automated timesheet reminder. So let's start step by step. This runs every week and in the US Central Daylight Savings Time at 10 a.m. on Monday, and or 10:01 actually on Monday. And at that point, it goes and it will log into our Business Central production environment, our DSWI company, and it pulls from our list of custom APIs that we've created. We've made a custom API called our DSWI timesheets. And what we do is we want to look only at timesheets from the last 7 days. So we're subtracting from time. So this was a little simple function that we did, which is kind of we used a connector. And these are connectors, by the way, called subtract from time. There's some very nice connectors that they have. So nope, I'm fine. Say add an action. So if you're looking for things like subtract or whatever, you can just start looking and date time, and then under date time you'll see subtract from time as one of those things you can do. So if you can think it, there's probably a little action item already there. The first one was recurrence, the second one is Business Central, the third subtract from time. And so we're doing is subtracting 7 days. And then we initialize some variables. We want to do some placeholders. One's called a timesheet start date. We want to actually get that date after today's date -7 has been calculated. We want to get that and hold that in a place. We also want to get another variable, which is how many timesheets are overdue. Because what's going to happen in this workflow is we're going to loop through every single one of our timesheets. So if there's 25 timesheets, it's going to go through all 25, and every time it finds an overdue one, it's going to send an email, and then it's also going to increment the value of the overdue timesheet variable. So I know at the end how many people were overdue. Now coming over here, you can see at Business Central, we're again capturing or getting the record for the timesheets, and then we have our conditions where the basically make sure that we are anybody who has the date which matches the starting date of 7 days ago, and then we're looking at anybody whose timesheet hours are less than what is the number of hours we have decided for them on their timesheet. We've added a variable that says if somebody is a junior consultant, your expectation for timesheet is this many hours. If they're a senior consultant, it's this many hours. If it is a part-time employee, it's this many hours, or so on. So that's what it checks. And we don't care at this point in our example whether it's billable time or admin time, because our consultants will have some mix of those. We just want to make sure that all your time is accounted for, right? As a services org. And so then over here, we are sending an email if somebody has fewer hours than what they're supposed to. And again, it just captures some key information from the different fields and places inside. And so these are in the last example, for some reason, I wasn't able to show all the different fields, but over here, all the different fields that we need are showing up over here in better detail. So I captured this. We go sent to myself, Craig, who is our practice director, and Justin, who heads up our PM desk. And they get an email, we get CC'd, and at the end, it also sends us a mobile notification saying how many people received an email that was overdue. So I just know at the end of kind of at about 10:05 on Monday or 10:03 on Monday, 5 people were late or 0 people were late. And usually it's 0 people. Once in a while, we'll have somebody who's behind. And so that gets the job done for us. Now, I realize this is like drinking from a fire hose. You've seen all of this, and if I told you to go and recreate this, you would absolutely not would struggle to do some of this. So, if you saw something you liked and you want some hands-on time building one with you, we'd be happy to do that for you. If you would like to actually play with some of the workflows that we've created, we'd be happy to export some of those in a JSON format. Now, we have found that when things move from one environment or tenant to another, there's still some work that needs to be done. What you could do though is you can import that and at least click through and see everything that we have done in our workflow, and then try to recreate that yourself. So, depending on what it is that you're interested in, we could either make a copy of this workflow available to you so you can poke and prod, or we can spend some time with you on the phone and with Teams or in person, depending on the situation. And again, help you understand what was done here and maybe even do something with your data. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to help you actually accomplish something. Today was more of a kind of, stroke the brain cells, give you some ideas of what you can do, and so on. I absolutely suggest before you do anything else, if you had 5 minutes, that you go sign up on make.powerautomate.com. Even before you go to learn, go to templates and play with a simple template that uses some tools that you already have in place. You're probably using Microsoft Teams. You're probably using Microsoft Outlook. Some of you are using SharePoint. Maybe you're using OneDrive. Look at something that looks like a tool that you use, not Business Central yet. Make one simple workflow. Start with a template, create one. Once you've got the first one under your belt, or maybe two or five, I think it really starts getting the blood pumping, and then I think you start getting more ideas. Then you can imagine how you can incorporate Business Central into this, and notice how some of them have two, three, four different connectors to use within a simple workflow. So try them out, get a sense for what that looks like, and then at that point, we'd be happy to help you create more complex ones and so on. We also run from time to time something called Automate in a Day workshop. So work with John to see if we've got one scheduled, and if not, we'd be happy to also make one for you happen. These Automate in a Day workshops, if we're doing it for a larger group, are typically done at no cost to the crowd. If we're doing it specifically with some custom scenarios for you in mind, we would that would be a paid workshop. But if we're doing it on some very standard scenarios that are preset in a day, then we'd be happy to run them for you or for a large group at no cost at all. I want to go to my wrap up slides at this point. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I can stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes for sure. But before we go into questions, I just want to say thank you very much for being a client of DSWI's, or considering, if you're a prospect, for considering doing business with DSWI. We appreciate you very much. Thank you for taking time to be on this call. With that, I'll go back into the question slide. John, did folks have any questions?
Yeah, so we got a question of API queries. Are they pages or some other object?
Very good question. I didn't know that most people would care at that level. APIs are absolutely pages. So in Business Central, when you want to talk to the customer table, whether it's just a pull data or push data, or the vendor table, we don't directly talk to tables. Pages, for anybody who isn't aware, they are basically visual constructs that show data in a table. So if you think of Business Central, you have a customer card and a customer page that both, or customer card page and a customer list page. Sorry, customer card page and a customer list page that both show customer tables information. The list page is going to have fewer fields. It shows you the number, the name, maybe the salesperson, and a couple of the things. The card page has more fields. And so typically, when we create an API page, we would show information from the customer card page. That's what you're exposing. It's very much like the web service endpoints. It's just that in the cloud world, Power Automate and Power Apps do not support web service endpoints. So we have to create APIs.